The personnel are irrelevant. The thing is, it is the White House.
America has no truer friend than Great Britain.
By the time he goes to Congress with that joint address by Bush to both houses of Congress, and he's sitting up there among the senators and representatives, he's given standing ovations. And this is the global citadel of pure power. The American president is bringing about standing ovations for you. There is no bigger stage in the world than that.
Blair took his seat at the heart of American empire and was ready to follow Bush's crusade to the ends of the earth. First stop, Afghanistan, in search of Osama bin Laden. But instead of just smoking their bogeyman out of his cave, they bombarded, occupied, ultimately destroyed one of the world's poorest countries. In truth, bin Laden was a sideshow, Afghanistan a springboard for a much more ambitious plan for the region.
I went through the Pentagon 10 days after 9/11. An officer from the Joint Staff called me into his office and said, "Sir, we're going to attack Iraq." I said, "Well, did they tie Saddam to 9/11? He said, "No." I walked out of there pretty upset. And then we attacked Afghanistan. And then I came back to the Pentagon about 6 weeks later. I saw the same officer. I said, why haven't we attacked Iraq? We still going to attack Iraq? He said, "Oh, sir," he says, "it's worse than that." He said, "We're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years. We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran."
So why this interest in dominating the Middle East? And why was Iraq at the top of the list?
I think it was primarily for oil, not just the oil of Iraq, but establishing a base at the heart of the main energy-producing region of the world.
The fact that many in the Bush administration stood to profit from Iraq's oil no doubt helped too. The policy was regime change, a crime under international law. To get the ball rolling, W invited Blair to his ranch in Texas, where they were alone together for several hours. Some say they got down on their knees and prayed.
If two people want to pray in private, that's their own business. Good luck to them. If they are praying to receive instructions from the Almighty about destroying our country and causing the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, then I think we start to have our problem. There were 4 big political figures around the world, global figures at the time: Blair, Bush, Osama bin Laden, and Saddam. And of the 4 of them, the only one who wasn't a religious maniac was Saddam.
When they left the ranch, Bush and Blair were singing from the same hymn sheet.
We both recognize the danger of Saddam Hussein harboring and developing weapons of mass destruction.
The president is right to draw attention to the threat of weapons of mass destruction. That threat is real.
As minutes of a Bush-Blair meeting spell out, the war was to be justified by imaginary threats, Iraqi terrorism and weapons of mass destruction, the intelligence to be fixed around the policy. As Blair toured the world drumming up support for the war, the Americans had discovered the only real WMD around, a weapon of mass deception.
Blair's strong, passionate, often advocacy of the war carried a lot of weight.
That evidence of weapons of mass destruction is evidence, the truth of which I've absolutely no doubt about at all.
Without Blair's vocal support and participation, they might not have been able to carry it off.
I think he facilitated it. I think he was very eloquent, even much more eloquent, of course, than our president.
But Blair knew his toughest sell would be at home.
The Iraqi regime has weapons of mass destruction, we know that. Weapons of mass destruction, chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons.
I don't think anybody in the British Foreign Office believed Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. I met Sir William Patey, who at the time was head of the Middle East department. And I stopped Bill in the corridor and I said, Bill, what's all this about WMD? It's not true, is it? And he said, of course not, it's bollocks. And that was precisely the time that Blair makes his claim.
With the letters WMD now etched onto the public imagination, Blair and his spin doctor Alastair Campbell cobbled together a dossier of so-called intelligence to crank up the fear of Saddam.
He has existing and active military plans for the use of chemical and biological weapons, which could be activated within 45 minutes.
Tony Blair was implying that Iraq could launch an attack using weapons of mass destruction within 45 minutes against the British Isles. I've been to pretty much all chemical facilities in Iraq. I oversaw the inspections of a huge number. I just don't think there was any evidence to support that they could launch anything within 45 minutes.
The UN inspectors were there and they were finding nothing. So why lie about it, continue to lie, if you had not ulterior motives to go into war regardless? And that was the truth.
This danger is present and real and with us now, and its potential is huge.
As the rhetoric heated up, the media coverage heated up, and the poll results followed along. People really became frightened.
Saddam Hussein is a threat to America. He's a threat to our friends. He's a man who said he wouldn't have weapons of mass destruction, yet he has them. He is a man who would likely team up with Al-Qaeda.
Well, that proved a lie. Saddam and Al-Qaeda were enemies. Every Iraqi knew. It was common knowledge that Al-Qaeda were opponents of Saddam.
My office was certainly placed under political pressure in this politicized effort to go to war on these pretexts of a link between Al-Qaeda and Saddam Hussein, which was, of course, fiction.
When the propaganda machine is full blast, it is a sight to behold in a way. The lies became so frantic that, wow, even a child would know who Saddam is, where Iraq is and why it should be invaded.
This is not the time to falter. This is the time for this House, not just this government or indeed this Prime Minister, but for this House to give a lead. To show that we will stand up for what we know to be right. To show that we will confront the tyrannies and dictatorships and terrorists who put our way of life at risk. To show at the moment of decision that we have the courage to do the right thing. I beg to move the motion.
On the brink of war, the anti-war movement became a tidal wave of opposition around the world.
Both Bush as well as Tony Blair are now wanting to plunge the world into a Holocaust. And I'm happy that the people of the world are standing up and opposing.
I say to Mr. Blair, the British people have voted with their feet.